Hello and welcome to this special video because we're going to do a flip through some old sketchbooks, or rather a lot of paper in my case. It's a format that I find very interesting with other artists, and I propose you to have a look at these old drawings with some important tips that made me evolve as an illustrator, as well as opportunities and sales to inspire you in your own journey and see at what level you may be able to start. I'm so super excited. By the way, if you want to monetize your art and make a living with illustration, subscribe for new videos every Tuesday at 6 p.m, alternating in English and French to help you go from art to business. Now let's get started. Let's just say that this first phase lasted almost all the time until I decided to seriously monetize my illustrations. My first passion was writing before drawing, and I found it fascinating to create stories, to provoke emotions, simply to invent complete universes from a blank page. So comics were the perfect way to combine stories and drawings, and when I was around 8 to 9 years old, I would watch my favorite TV shows and redraw the whole episode with my own characters every single evening. At the time I didn't realize it, but drawing every day without fail propelled me forward tremendously. Yes, it was ugly and poorly constructed, but I was so happy that I forgot about everything around me in these imaginary worlds. It made me gain a lot of confidence with my lines, handling a pencil, and just drawing whatever I wanted, no matter the result. It is often said that you have to get past 10,000 hours of practice to start getting results, and I take from that the fact that logically, the more fun you have and the more you practice, the sooner you will be able to stand out. When I was 11 to 12 years old, discovering manga with Naruto was like a V revelation. I was so in love with Sasuke, and I tried to copy the style to learn with Manga for Dummies books. So to tell you the truth, I was never able to copy correctly because I hated being exact and I preferred to draw freely. I'm talking about this because I've seen students coming to my classes who absolutely wanted to copy to improve, and honestly I'm not a fan of it. Yes, you can learn by copying, but mostly by understanding the structure behind it. Of course, if you want to learn about, let's say, the muscles of the human body, you're going to need references because it's a job that has to be accurate. But I really think that if you're just starting out and you really want to progress, freeing yourself from patterns is so beneficial. It forces you to be more creative, to look further, to have more free and dynamic strokes. In short, to gain confidence in your abilities without being dependent on external factors. Some of my students have a crazy level of copying, but for exercises where they need to come up with their own ideas, it doesn't work at all. If you want to make a living with drawing, being able to be creative will play a big role. Anyways, back to the point, thanks to manga, I got into the OC trip. I think there are many here who have that, like our little favorite characters that we love and that we reuse everywhere. Come on, admit it. So after discovering manga, I started to create illustrations too, while continuing to make comics because I could already see myself creating the next Naruto and becoming so famous and everything. My big goal became to publish a manga at any cost. I had a big period where I was alternating between colorful illustrations and manga pages. Within 2 or 3 years, I drew over 1,000 manga pages, again full of mistakes but so useful to gain confidence and challenge myself with angles of views, unusual poses and new techniques, which allowed me to level up little by little. At that time I created my first blog under the name Nyase Ayase, and don't ask me why it's so cringy, and I exchanged almost every day with other artists. We read our manga online, we gave each other feedback on our drawings. In short, we progressed together. And it was great because we had the same passions, the same dreams, and we pushed each other forward. That's when I started hearing about perspective, trying to deliberately improve my anatomy, when I got my first Copic mark markers, which were the most precious treasure in the world to me. As I got access to the internet and interacted with other manga fans, I began to define my style better. It came naturally as I went along in accordance to my tastes. And I especially fell into my gothic Lolita and visual kei phase with the Japanese group Versailles, both of which influenced me tremendously for a darker and gothic style. But seriously, being surrounded by a caring community where you share the same passions and support each other is the best thing that can happen to you as an artist. And it's from that moment, around 2010, with that level you see on the screen right now, that the opportunities to monetize my art started. First online store, first private art commissions, first exhibitions and self-published books that led to an invitation to a high school and a 3-year contract of weekly manga classes in a local store. And seriously, I was 15 years old, my drawings were still lacking, but allowed me to earn an average of 200 euros pocket money per month. And I'll always say it again, even if you're young, even if your designs still have flaws, there will always be people to support you if you show your enthusiasm and really try to improve. Really don't wait for everything to be perfect. You'll miss out on a lot of opportunities. Get started, get feedback, adjust, and you'll automatically evolve as you go. A year later, I entered the art section in high school. In Luxembourg, some high schools make us choose a more specific field for our last 3 years, so I took art. And there I took full advantage of it to show my drawings to some teachers in order to get professional opinions that I never had before, and it really opened my eyes to my shortcomings, like perspective, light and shadow, classical anatomy. One teacher in particular had teased me by saying that my characters were always too beautiful and that I would never get out of the manga style, so I really wanted to prove him wrong by studying all the points he corrected me on, new techniques, realism. In the end I stayed with manga because I liked it too much, but again I drew a lot and that made me level up. If you have the opportunity to meet someone in the industry who is willing to give you advice, take it to heart to improve yourself. We don't always realize our shortcomings ourselves, and those close to us who are not in the business cannot guide us correctly. Professional advice that pinpoints your strengths and weaknesses is really something that will help you take a giant step forward. And that being said, I've entered my second phase. – 2012-13 are probably the years I consider to have defined my style, and it was very interesting. Before I used to draw with no ulterior motive and just for fun. Now I was drawing for fun too, but with an awareness of my level and my weaknesses, and it was, I don't know, like fascinating to realize that I was able to put on paper what I really wanted. I think for every artist, reaching that milestone is something special because you get to a point where you're in tune with what you want to do in your head and what you're able to do with your hand, where you've gained maturity and confidence and can afford to step out of your comfort zone. It's challenging but motivating at the same time. I don't know if it makes sense. Let me know in the comments if you've been there too, so I feel less alone. But honestly, if my anatomy had been good at the time, I would say that this was the period where I produced my best illustrations and where I felt the most in tune with my desires and my drawings. Since I had finally learned and understood the basics of how to improve and gain confidence accordingly, I was trying out a lot of new things and creating much more ambitious illustrations, especially in terms of backgrounds and details. I developed a fascination for Art Nouveau and cathedral windows, and a big change was also my coloring technique, where I started blending with Copic, which is still my main technique nowadays, because I actually wanted to have a similar rendering to Final Fantasy but in traditional. Needless to say, I never got to that point. In terms of universe, it became much more coherent, with recurring themes like fashion with Gothic Lolita, Baroque and burlesque inspirations, as well as fairy tales. It was at this point that I started to sell some originals, especially the larger, more detailed formats, which could go up to 40 times 60 centimeters. After high school, I was totally lost, and I had decided to stop drawing because I didn't see how I could make a living out of it with 1 weekly class and 3 to 4 commissions a year. If I hadn't been invited to a book fair to sell my comics at that time, I think I would have given up. But with conventions, a whole new world opened up for me, and I got super serious about creating prints and goodies. Meeting physically with other successful artists who could give me advice, with whom I could talk, gave me a huge boost to realize that art is a real job, that it is possible, and I wanted to give it a try so I wouldn't regret it. Once again, the community that surrounds you is golden. So I started to create more drawings in order to sell and make a living, and also to have regular news on my Facebook page and for manga cons. As far as opportunities and monetization are concerned, it was getting better and better. I signed my first publishing contract for my manga Ordalium, where I drew 200 pages in 1 year, and I started to have more regular commissions to illustrate small ads and books. With Nodians, it was again growing slowly but steadily with each new con. If I remember correctly, within 2 years I increased my revenue to around 10,000 euros, which was of course far from enough to make a living, but it motivated me to continue because I never thought I would succeed with manga, as people kept saying it was not possible in Europe. But at the same time, I felt that my drawing was declining. Kinda like I've increased in technique and quality, so I can reduce the backgrounds and details to save time. The 200 pages of Ordalium had killed me, and I started to have this little shift in mentality of I must produce if I want to make a living. And looking back, that period kinda saddens me, because I really think that my illustrations took a hit downward, where I started to lose that happiness and pride from before, because I knew deep down that I could do better. The moment you do something out of fear or for money, you're no longer able to produce projects that you're fully proud of, and your self-confidence takes a hit. It often dragged me down when I was negotiating with clients because I didn't dare to sell myself at a price I deserved and kept on going with underpaid projects. So really, always keep in mind your why, your love of drawing. People feel it and see the difference between an artist who is really in it for the passion and an artist who is in it to pay the bills. And honestly, even though my sales were growing, from a drawing standpoint, I don't really have any special memories of those 2 years, except that I felt frustrated with myself and had a hard time projecting myself into the future. In 2017, at the age of 23, I had more and more requests, so here I am as a freelance artist as soon as I had finished my studies. I decided that I was done complaining, that I had the opportunity to do an amazing job that I loved. My big dream at the time was to join an art agency and do lifestyle, fashion and beauty illustrations for magazines, product packaging and advertising. It was a phase where I really enjoyed drawing again. It was about themes I loved and where I started to experiment with techniques again. Looking back, I realized that the phases where I was experimenting the most were really the periods where I had the most fun drawing. Again, even when drawing is a job that pays your bills, always remember that it is a joy above everything else. It's so important to keep drawing for yourself, for fun, even limit it to something that you can keep private without the need to monetize, that will not be shown to anyone. If you really want to pursue this profession and this passion for a long time, this is the most important advice I can give you. Now, getting back to portfolios, you might be interested to know that I contacted 107 companies and only received 8 responses, which were rejecting me. I attributed this to my techniques being a bit too varied because I thought I had to change my style depending on the client, and indeed it was hard to recognize a consistent style. When I decided to focus solely on my copic style with perfectly detailed blending, I saw a little up in sales during conventions because my style was much more consistent and defined. As time went by, thanks to a mix of events, online presence and word of mouth, I managed to get bigger commercial contracts for companies and ministries, and my big personal project was again a manga of almost 200 pages, illustrated fairy tales. Illustrations, on the other hand, became much scarcer, but when I did, I tried to take more time to add nice details, backgrounds and more again, which paid off too because almost all of my original illustrations from the last few years have sold. Otherwise, I occasionally worked on characters and inkings for coloring books, which allowed me to have news to showcase while being easier and faster to do than full illustrations. Looking back, these last 3 years of freelancing were a bit of a roller coaster between big moments of happiness and big periods of stress. By focusing more and more on work and money, I was accepting too many commissions, some clients that didn't fit my style and values, and I was working totally stupid hours, evenings, weekends to satisfy my clients and meet all these deadlines. And last year I could really go more than 6 months without creating any personal illustration, because I was just too stressed and had too much to do. Outside of art commissions, I hardly produced anything on my own, and suddenly it was too much. I went into burnout. I'm not going to dwell on it too much because it was kinda a depressing time. Basically, it got to the point where I was shaking with disgust when I held a pencil, and I was firmly convinced that I would give up drawing as a profession altogether. For the fun fact, that's why you have this YouTube channel, because it was my way to stay in this industry that I loved without drawing myself, and especially to support artists with advice to prevent them from turning their dream job into a nightmare, because it's really horrible. I can't say it enough, but keep some time for yourself, where you just draw what you like, not because you need it and because it pays your bills. And most importantly, even if an overbooked schedule makes you think so successful, you won't keep up in the long run. Learning to turn down clients is a strength, because not every project will work out for you. The key to happiness in this job, and in all the others too, I think, is above all to respect yourself. So there you have it. After that, there's not many new artwork to see. My art-based academia project to support artists has allowed me to get back into it little by little with mini drawings and comics of the mascot Alice, so just a simple character totally in my comfort zone, and most importantly, without pressure. Recently, I managed to draw a first full illustration with details and background again after posing for almost a whole year. I can't tell you how much I procrastinated about getting back into it, but I realized the longer I waited, the less chance I'd have of ever getting back into illustration seriously, and I'm really glad I did. I'm not drawing much now, but I've started enjoying it again. I'm trying to slowly get back to that carefree spirit I had in the beginning, and I'm experimenting a bit with what I denied myself for the last few years, because I didn't have time to have fun without making money, because I was so afraid I wouldn't survive. Right now I'm having fun designing clothes because I love fashion, and I took up again a style I gave up because it clashes too much with my usual one, and I'm slowly advancing on the second volume of Illustrator. Basically nothing terribly extraordinary, but I enjoy getting back to drawing with a more serene state of mind. Anyway, that's it for this retrospective. It was a bit weird to see all those old illustrations again. I had forgotten some of them, and others brought back beautiful memories and the emotions like I felt at that time. There are young artists who always throw away their drawings under the pretext that they are ugly, but seriously, keep them. In a few years, when you look at them again, you'll see them with a totally different eye. You'll see how far you've come, how much effort and work you've put in, and those memories are priceless. If you like this video, please leave a little thumbs up, and I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Do you want to see more personal and behind the scenes videos like this one? My character tends to always prefer structured, straight to the point educational advice, but it's nice to change up the format every once in a while, so let me know what you think of it. I'll see you next time for more practical artist tips that will make it easier for you to get started as an illustrator if that's what you want to do. Remember to subscribe and turn on the notification bell if you're interested to go from art to business on Tuesdays at 6 p.m. Thank you so much for being here, and see you soon!